How you doing, YouTube? Matt with Massive Beer Reviews. Back to get another review. A little bit of bean time. I'm going to flick that bean time in the form of Sixpoint Brewing's 4 beans. So rye barrel aged. And they're 5 beans. They're port barrel aged. Yeah, a little bit of beanery. Don't have a lot of bean jokes to drop on you right now other than fart jokes and sexual innuendo. But yeah, Bean Day. They did this whole kind of, Bean Day release where they had a couple different beers, and these are the 2 of the brewery-only releases, or so I've been told. I didn't look at anything as per my usual kind of whatevers. But a good friend of mine, Mr. Tom, you would know him from some of my videos. He sends me a lot of Brooklyn stuff, but we met up, actually. It's been a while since we actually hung out, and he got this weird kind of liquor that I wanted to get my future wife's grandma, this weird Aalborg Aquavit liquor for my future grandma. And he's like, let's meet somewhere. And he ended up dropping these suckers on me. So thanks very much, Times. So, yeah. Let's see what these suckers have. First things first. What's on the cans? It says 4 beans. It's rye barrel aged porter with natural flavors and coffee added. On this one, you have 5 beans, which is a port barrel aged porter with natural flavors added. What's the story here? You have 3 beans, 4 beans, 5 beans. 3 beans is your coffee, cocoa, and then they got some weird kind of actual green vegetable bean. They say add kind of body to it. I forget the name of it. Then you have 4 beans. This is another added bean to it. You're looking at vanilla here. And then your 5 beans. The ever so lovely Massive Chore Reviews cardamom. So you have cardamom and vanilla. So vanilla and cardamom and vanilla. So you're talking about, that's the difference essentially between the 2 beers as far as what Sixpoint tells us. And obviously we're dealing with a rye versus a port barrel aged version. So I thought it'd be fun to kind of bounce these off each other and see what the big difference is between the both. So your coffee and chocolate, vanilla and cardamom, rye, port. Let's do it. That's all there is. Label-wise, it's cool. This one kind of has like, I don't know, kind of wheat husks kind of floating around on there. And like, designs that a lot of people get kind of tattooed, geometric style designs. This one just has weird kind of beans on it. So there you go. Let's see what the sucker has to offer. Open. Can number 1. Can number 2. So, give these the dual pour. I'm really curious to see the big difference between these 2. If there is any. It's been a while since I've had any of the beans, whether it be 4 beans, whether it be 5 beans, or whether it be 3 beans. It's been a bit, so it'll be fun to kind of dive into these. They look exactly the same, from head color to head size to coloration of the whole beers. I'm not going to kind of break them down. They look exactly the same. They're big, they're dark, they're kind of imperial porterish kind of in color. So let's just scoot over to this one, get a little bit of the 4 beans. So we're talking rye barrel aged and vanilla. Definitely getting that kind of bourbon-y vibe to it, though. It's not necessarily more rye. There's a little bit of spiciness to it, but it's coming off more kind of bright red cherry to me, actually, rather than rye bourbon. But, I mean, you're getting a kind of whiskey vibe to it, let's put it that way. Definitely getting a vanilla. And I'm getting a spiciness that's outside of that rye. It's coming off kind of like a kind of like coriander, cardamom kind of thing over here. Yeah, it's got that kind of whiskey vibe to it. Not necessarily saying rye. It's kind of this whiskey vibe, but it just doesn't have that kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It has that additional kind of spiciness to it, almost like a kind of winter warmer kind of spice. Get a subtle little bit of coffee out of there. Old school coffee, a little bit of bittering, nothing too crazy. But she smells sweet, she smells roasty, smell a little bit of coffee, getting that kind of whiskey note out of it. Nothing too crazy. Maybe that spiciness is a barrel thing, it could be. But yeah, it smells like a barrel-aged, kind of bigger, darker beer, but nothing too insane. Let's go over here, see what 5 beans has to do. Much the same. Muted, though. A bit more muted, to be perfectly honest with you. Everything is kind of there, just a little bit denser, a little bit more tightly wound, a little bit smaller, but more dense, if that makes any sense. Darker. Like if this is chocolate, this would be semi-sweet. This is B. Baker's kind of vibe going on in there. That's pretty much it. I'm very similar noses. Again, like I said, this one's a little bit more bright, a little bit more fresh. This one's a little bit more rounded, a little bit more dense. But other than that, they smell pretty close to each other. So that's the weird thing about it. It's like, you know, you have your rye, you have your port. With your port, you expect a little bit more kind of, I don't know, there's like sourness to it, but a little bit more maturity. Maybe that's what's bringing that little bit of roundness to this, that little bit of port kind of just kind of jacking up that kind of age on the beer itself. Could be the case. So I'm just going to dive in. Cheers. Beautiful mouthfeel to it. It's an Imperial Porter. Great mouthfeel to it. A bit hot. You can get a bit of that hotness from that liquor. A little bit hotness from that beer. What's the ABV on this? Do they actually put it on here? I don't know if they actually do. Can't fit a ton of stuff in these little energy drink cans to begin with. I don't see an ABV on here, but I'm guessing this has got to be like 11, give or take. Definite porter vibes. Heat. Chocolate comes through. Like a semi-sweet thing. I have that little bit of a metallic kind of astringency thing that I get from some of these darker beers, which makes me think it might be a little lower ABV than I think. Usually I get that from lower ABV beers. A little bit of smokiness, a little bit of charriness from the barrel. Now, maybe that's where that spiciness is coming from. I talked about it on the nose. But you're getting a little bit more rye component from the actual booziness in there, too. So it's kind of a separate thing, but it kind of works together. Tasty beer, fun beer. A little bit harsh, though. A little bit hot. But yeah, nice. Like I said, porter through and through. Imperial Porter through and through. Roasty. Bit of kind of bitterness to it. Probably a little bit from the coffee, a little bit from the smoky barrel, a little bit from the kind of roasted malts. There's enough sweetness. Definitely balance it off. Tasty. Not too shabby. Let's come over here. Get a little port in our life. Cheers. Wow. Completely different beer. That little bit of density, that kind of roundness, is definitely the porter at work here. This comes off very port, like where this one kind of came off hot. This one's coming off boozy, but not in a kind of heat kind of way. More in just an overall, okay, there's a lot of liquor involved in this one. It's as close as you get to like a kind of tannic vinous, kind of almost souriness without going there. It almost trumps the beer completely. I'm getting this soft kind of baker's chocolate underneath. I'm getting very minimal bitterness. Still there, but much less than this beer over here. Getting really not much of any vanilla. Not that I got a ton of it over here. But what you're left with is this kind of soft port character that is an umbrella, like a shell almost, like a candy shell and like an M&M. That's kind of encasing the whole thing inside. And letting, or actually preventing a lot of those flavors from coming out. Yeah, almost like if this, I'm not saying it's turned and I'm not saying it's sour, but if you gave these a year, I think this might be a pretty good. Might hash into something pretty incredible. This might turn into just sourness. The port is so big in there. It's definitely kind of outside of that sour component that port wines can sometimes flirt with. But yeah, it's weird. It's weird to have a beer that is, you know, added components to it, but ends up coming off much less just because of that barrel. Yeah, interesting kind of side by side. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. This beer's way more robust. 5 beans or 4 beans comes off way more robust. I mean, the vanilla is kind of not really coming through for me all that much. But other than that, you're getting a bit of coffee in there. You get a nice big roast. You get a bit of bitterness from both, you know, the coffee to the kind of smoky, kind of charry barrelness to the actual malt itself. And it's fun. It kind of gives you a kind of sticks and moves here and there to kind of keep you entertained while at the same time having a nice kind of density to it, thickness to it. This one just kind of comes off like a dark beer in a port barrel. And I don't think it's a matter of kind of going from this to this, because even going back and tasting back and forth, the differences are much more stark. So the port barrel here is really heavy-handed, kind of taking over to the beer to the point where it's kind of the beer's getting lost in the port barrel, whereas this one's being, well boozy, well strong, complementing the beer, and the beer's still there. The bits and pieces, the adjuncts of the beer are still there. This is the barrel is another component, albeit a decently sized one, but you still get all the bits and pieces. Here, port barrel kind of trumps everything. So yeah, fun little side-by-side. Let's talk about them. Are these two of the best Imperial barrel-aged porters or barrel-aged dark beers? Big barrel-aged dark beers that I've had as late? No. Neither of them blow me away. But they're fun. Obviously, the Four Beans, I'm sure that came off. I like that one a little bit better because there's a bit more kind of depth and complexity to it. And while I do love me some port wine, I kind of want a port wine barrel-aged beer, and here I'm just getting more port wine than I am beer. Value and availability, don't know. They were given to me by a lovely friend, Tom, so hopefully somebody chimes in with what's what. Pretty sure they're a brewer only, and leave you with, if you like what we like these, if you like barrel-aged beers, if you like coffee and whiskey. Not necessarily going to go rye on that end. A little bit of smokiness, a nice bitterness, kind of almost like bitter, like acidic kind of bitterness, like a coffee bitterness, an old school coffee to be bounced off by sweetness. You like this one. If you like port wine and dark beer. Generally, just like dark beer, nothing else. You can't like nothing else. Just dark beer and port wine, because that's what you're getting over here. So there you go. Another review in the books. Hopefully you guys enjoyed our review. If you didn't, anywhere in between, down there, words and stuff and things. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Untapped. Massive Beers, all four of those places if you want to check this dude out somewhere else. And another review in the books. So hopefully you guys enjoyed our review. Hopefully you're enjoying nice 4, 5, or 20 bean right now. And hope to see you next time. Cheers.